So this talk is the 8th talk in the series, and it's on the 6th Parami, the Parami of Patience. And I just gave the title, Be Still and Be Timeless. The word in Pali for patience, savlanut, is Khanti. And it's very similar to the Sanskrit word kshanti. Kshanti is the Sanskrit word for patience, but it's also very close to the word shanti, which is in Sanskrit peace. So peace would be shalva, sheket, shalom, of course. And Khanti is very close, in other words, to peace. And but patience is a process, and it needs us, in a way, to do something. Patience is something that we develop. And the meaning of Khanti, patience, is also about putting up with what is allowing things to be what they are, putting up with, not struggling against, not trying to change things, but putting up with things. Even forgiveness, it has also that meaning. And in the tradition, patience is the medicine that I've seen it described in the tradition as the medicine against snake bite. The bite of a snake. Snake in the tradition is one of the three klesas, or the three powers that keep samsara going round. And snake is aversion, negativity, anger, irritation. If you remember, at the heart of paticca samuppada, of the wheel of samsara, the wheel of life, what's driving the wheel of conditioning and the wheel of life is aversion, desire, and delusion. Aversion is the snake, desire is the cock, delusion the pig, and they go round, they send us round. And snake is the aversion side. So the antidote, the medicine to aversion is negativity, slida. Slida, it's also anger, kas, it's also jealousy, kin'a, it's also negativity to ourselves, rikshei asham, shiputiyut, bikoritiyut, all the world of negative emotion, energy is the snake. And hatred, of course, just anger, kas, and hate, sin'a, b'kol minei. But the snake can be also, as you know, quite delicate. In your question, I see, about slida, it wasn't gross, because they're gas. Slida can be very delicate, just like לא רוצה, או משהו ממש עדין, מחשבה שלילי נגד עצמנו. כמה יש בתוך יום, I mean, how many times in a day we think small little thoughts against ourselves or against somebody else? How many times a day? And we don't think anything of it, but it is the snake. even then, it's the snake. How many times we just get irritated, matzben, we just irritate because we don't get what we want. Someone asks us, please make me a cup of tea. We make a cup of tea, and the person says, actually it doesn't have enough sugar in it. Your reaction is first, no, I made you a cup of tea, look, don't complain immediately. Small, so small, daily life 100 times. We get irritated when we don't get what we want. Our reaction is aversion in a very light way, but it's happening all the time. This is still the snake. How many times inside families there are hard words spoken in a family, and you think it's okay, and maybe it is okay, but we still need to recognize this is aversion, zeh shlita, adin, this is a snake. It's very basic. It comes from a deep feeling that life is not enough, of imperfection, lo shlemut, chaser. Something else is needed. Something else has to happen. I'm not content with what is. Ein li sviat ratzon ma sheyesh. And I think it's really strong inside Israeli culture, Jewish culture, I think, ghetto culture. Really strong. Culture, it's almost like it's a small story. When I first came to Israel, and I saw two people, one person came to another person, and the second one was shouting like this. And I asked Rachel, what's the shouting about? And she said, she was listening, she said, he's telling the person the directions to go. It's very much Israeli life. It comes from, I think, very, very deep pain and suffering inside culture. And it's not that there's not suffering in other places, but it's expressed quite a lot in Israeli life through hard words, quite a lot of anger, anxiety, irritation, atzbanut. It's a lot. It's also New York. It's not California, and it's not Totnes in South England. It's definitely here in Israel, quite strong, and in New York and in some other places. This hardness, harshness, and it goes with a lot of running. And we think this is ordinary. This is okay. Everyone's running. And usually this running is to fix something. It's not enough. Life is not enough as it is. I need to run, I need to fix, I need to do, I need to get more, I need to achieve, I need to succeed. It goes with a lot of running. And we forget that all running, in that sense, is running away. Is running in reaction too. Is a tguva lemashu. Something is not right. We have to fix it. We have to run to do more, to make it right. All of that is the snake. And the patience, Khanti, is exactly the opposite. It's just not giving in to that quality of the snake, of aversion, negativity, and all the things that come out of it. It's being very, very steady. It's being very calm. It's being like a big ship on the ocean. when you're struggling to stand in a queue, in a line, waiting for a bus or whatever, and you feel the irritation coming, the atzpanut. Why don't they get moving? I'm wasting time. Then if you ask yourself, actually, what's wrong in this moment? Is there something wrong right now? Then the whole thing collapses. Because really there's nothing wrong in this moment of my life. I'm just standing here. But it's the habit of the snake that's making it wrong to stand in a line because we want something to happen that's not happening now. The pakid to give us a paper that we want. So it's the sense of being steady and quiet with what is, not needing to have a result now, and pushing life. But patience, Khanti, is not about control, because control is more aversion. And this is a mistake that is often made. So you sometimes see people that look very calm, but actually it is control, and that's not real Khanti. It's having to control life so that, and control myself is more negativity. And it is, I gave the image of the swan, the barbour. It's the sort of negative side of the swan, that the swan is calm above and underneath is like this. So it's the sort of negative side of that image, that the swan is struggling under the water like this, and above the water is just floating peacefully. And I know people like that too. I know that tendency to, especially in the spiritual culture, to be very calm and sort of almost like got a blissful kind of external new age quiet, and underneath, you know, it's a lot of stuff which is not being seen there, and it usually will come out if this person doesn't get what they want. And then it will come out. So it's not about control, it's about being settled in the heart and in the heartbeat of your life. It's about being settled, being in the center of your life and resting there when there is nothing that needs to be changed or fixed or wrong. And things are just as they are. And in that sense, there is no pain in patience. So it takes the sevel out of savlanut. And Samti Lev, I saw that in savlanut there is the word sevel. There doesn't have to be. This is not needed. There is no need for pain inside patience. It's the opposite. It's this the inner heart of peace. Shantideva, who is a really kind of key, one of the all-time great Buddhist teachers, used more by in the Tibetan tradition than in the Theravada tradition, but is universal. And he said there's no practice so hard and yet so powerful as patience, Khanti. And there's no evil so great as anger. We put anger really high as a basic problem for us, and patience really high as a practice. And because it's so powerful as a practice. And I hope in this talk you will get a sense of how powerful this is as a practice. Very often we actually need to look for trouble in our life in order to practice patience. We not to be frightened of being close to someone else who's angry with us, for example. Not see, that's the teaching I need. I need someone close to me who's angry because I can practice patience. And it's quite a big thing. The Dalai Lama said again and again to the Tibetan people, you may be suffering endlessly from the Chinese. The Chinese are killing and putting into prison and torturing and destroying Tibetan culture. But there's nothing so important in spiritual practice. Almost nothing is important or as helpful as a good enemy. I'm maybe exaggerating a little bit. But it's, the Dalai Lama said they are the great teachers for you, the Chinese. Which is very radical when you think about it. I remember in the Castaneda book, Castaneda, Don Juan was telling about his own life story, how Don Juan was looking after the horses for a Mexican woman who was a real tyrant. You know the word tyrant?
No.
Tyrann.
Aritz.
Aritz. And was given hell. And he said, but this is what I need right now. She is my teacher. So he put up with it. And he went in there and forgave her. And he allowed her to scream at him and hit him. He said, I need this. It's important for me to learn this. There's a nice story also that I remember from the Gurdjieff community, that they had a community house in Fontainebleau in France. And there was one person there that was really bad-tempered, angry, giving hell to everybody, really making trouble for everybody. And they were really fed up with him. And in the end, they gave him such a bad time that he said, okay, I'm going. And he went off to Paris. When Gurdjieff found out about this, Gurdjieff rushed in his car to Paris and said to the guy, I'll pay you to come back. Brought him back. And everybody said, you brought this guy back? And you paid him our money as well to come back. How would you do such a thing? Gurdjieff said, he's your teacher. You need him. So we practice patience by being very clear about anger in us, being very clear when anger arises, even if it's delicate, like irritation, ktsat atzbanut, or ktsat slida, aversion, a little bit delicate, snake. We see that it makes us contracted. We see that it has dukkha. It is painful. It is in the habit of self. It's the snake talking. It's not very useful. If we're standing in a queue in a line and we have this aversion arising, it's not going to make the line go faster. So it has no use. Usually it has no use. It doesn't help us. And it has a and there is a lot of deeper practice too, which is really about seeing the way conditions arise and pass. And conditions arising because that's their time to arise. That's their time, everything in its time. It's the famous quote from Kohelet, from the book of Ecclesiastes. Kohelet, everything in its time. That understanding, things arise because this is the time for something to arise. This is the time for a difficult experience to come. We can't control the timeline of things. We can't control when things arise or when they don't. We can't control when we get sick and when we die. We can't control pleasant and unpleasant experiences. They come at the right time. And what we need to do is just be steady and quiet and peaceful in the space of allowing things to arise when they come in our life. One will be pleasant, one will be unpleasant, and we just need to be quiet and patient and steady and be in the center of our life and let them arise in their time. I remember the story when I mentioned it to the group this weekend. We just had a weekend in Cleo on nature, and one of the stories that I told that I remembered is from Zorba in the book Zorba, the Greek, the Yavan. And the story I've never forgotten. I read the book years and years and years ago, so I don't remember anything in the book, but I do remember the story that Zorba tried to help a butterfly, seeing the struggle of the butterfly to come out of the pupa of the golem. The butterfly was trying to pull himself out of the golem, struggling, and Zorba helped it to come out, but then it just dropped because it was wrong to help the butterfly, because the butterfly needed to come out in its time, and Zorba was impatient, was saying, no, my time, I take you out, I interfere, I won't. And the butterfly couldn't live. And I think it's an important story. Everything in its time, everything in its right place and right time. This is the basis of Khanti, patience. Things arise in their time. We, with our human time and our mind, which is impatient or wanting things to happen, it's not in natural time. It's in conditioned time. And that's not always helpful and gives us a lot of trouble. And patience is allowing natural time to do things. Like the chicken and the egg. This morning, I went to feed the chickens. And there were new chicks just born in the night. And I saw them this morning. I was so happy. And I wasn't quite sure. Usually I write in my diary, my Yoman, when the chicks come out. But I forgot to write, so I wasn't sure when they would come. So every day I check, and I give a bit of food for the mother. But I close her for various reasons. She's closed in a compartment, and I give food and water. And there they were, these tiny little chicks this morning, so nice. But I thought of this, and I thought it only will happen in its time. It will not happen one day before or one day later. And that's so fine. That's really fine to be like that with our life, with our world. And there is, as I said in the talk, I think last time about the chicken and the eggs, right? In the energy talk, I mentioned something about chicken and the egg. But there was a sutta about this, but I think it's also telling us about patience too, about natural time to be patient. And in some way or other, if we connect with the inner heartbeat, Pimot Alev, with inner time, then it's not so difficult to be patient. It's not hard. It doesn't need effort. It needs a kind of clarity and intimacy with the way things develop, rather than effort. I must be patient. I must be patient is another, in a way, the snake again, in the name of patience. It makes effort. But sometimes you do need it. As Shantideva said, it's a practice. We need to, sometimes we need that practice. I want to read Rilke. He wrote, everything is gestation, meaning before birth, and then birthing. To let each impression and each embryo, ubar, of a feeling come to completion entirely in itself, in the dark, in what cannot be spoken, the unconscious, beyond the reach of one's understanding, and with deep humility and patience to wait for the hour when a new clarity is born. In this there is no measuring with time. A year doesn't matter, and 10 years are nothing. Being an artist means not numbering and counting, but ripening like a tree, which doesn't force its sap. Sap is the juice of the tree. Doesn't force it. It stands confidently in the storms of spring, not afraid that afterwards summer may not come. It does come, but it comes only to those who are patient, who are there as if eternity lay before them. So unconcerned, silent and vast. I learn it every day of my life. I learn it with pain I am grateful for. Patience is everything. It's from Rilke. This is quite a big issue in the world of our spiritual life, because we get impatient. I want awakening now, not next year. I don't want to do 100 retreats before I'm awakened. I want change, transformation to happen now. Or in a small way, I want something to happen in this retreat. I've done many retreats before, and now my back is hurting in this retreat and I don't understand why. I've already practiced a lot. Why am I having such a difficult time? Everyone goes through this. When will it happen? This question. When will I go through? When will transformation? When will it happen? Everybody here in this room is asking that question at some time or other. But we forget that in that question of spiritual impatience, there is a striving, a push to be somewhere else than where we are. It's this push. Matai Mashiach ba? When is the Messiah coming? When is Elohim coming? And we forget that there's dukkha in that, impatience. We forget it. We think it's part of spiritual life. But it's good to open it and see, yes, there too, dukkha. Because we want something to change, we want to be somewhere else, we want to be there already. And we're only here. And it makes that gap is painful for us. Waiting. We're waiting. There is a very strong word in Latin that the early monks or the mystic Christians used to use. It's called expectatas, and it means waiting. And waiting for revelation, waiting for Christ, waiting for chesed, waiting for God. So there was a lot of that in the monastic Christian community. They talked about it a lot, waiting.
Also expect something, support.
Exactly. And T.S. Eliot said, I said to my soul, be still and wait without hope. For hope would be hope for the wrong thing. Wait without love, for love would be love of the wrong thing. There is also faith, but the faith and the love and the hope are all in the waiting. Wait without thought, for you are not ready for thought. So the darkness shall be the light, and the stillness is the dancing, the whisper of running streams. So it's kind of letting go deeply from spiritual impatience. And there's lots in the Buddhist tradition about this, that even in the Paramis, which is the subject of these talks, Buddhist tradition talks about Paramis as being developed over many thousands of lifetimes until all the Paramis are perfectly developed, and then you become a Buddha. But that it takes lifetimes of the being born again and again and again. If you remember right at the beginning, I talked about this. Going back to school, back to Kita Aleph, well, born again. Back to Kita Aleph again. You didn't learn this Parami, patience, so you'd be born again to have another go. You think you got further? Okay, maybe Kita Bet. Next life, Kita Gimel. But you need maybe 1,000 times you have to be born again.
You can be teaching a teacher of class 1, Kita Aleph.
So it's just a message of the vastness of the story. It's infinite. There isn't really a kind of a beginning and an end of this. We're not in regular human time. Spiritual progress, spiritual journey is not in regular human time that says, I want this now, next year I want that, next year I want this, next year it should be like that. If I do 10 retreats, this will happen. If I do 100 retreats, that will happen. That is not in spiritual time. That is in conditioned time. In the self's time of measuring where I am and where I want to be, and the And where the spiritual life is in another place. It's in a place of timeless. It's a timeless place. So it's timeless in English. I think in Hebrew is sometimes translated as nitzchi, but it's not really that. It is not even interested in time. It is beyond time. Nitzchi is already somehow in time, but forever. But we're not in that territory at all. Timeless. They say eder zman or bilti. Yeah. There is a text. One time the Buddha met a ascetic yogi from the Jain group religion. And the Jain was standing on one leg. And he'd been standing on one leg so long that the other leg had become useless. And the Buddha said to him, "What are you doing?" He said, "I'm standing on one leg for years." The Buddha said, "How long have you been standing on one leg?" 10 years. "And what is it that you're standing on one leg for?" "I want to burn up my karma and become enlightened, a saint. Finish my karma and become a saint, awakened person." And the Buddha said, "How long will it take you?" He said, "I don't know." "You don't know how many more years you need to do this?" "No." "And do you know will you recognize when you're finished?" "No." "And you've been doing it 10 years already?" "Yes." "So maybe you do something else. maybe it's not wise what you're doing." In other words, you can't measure these things. If I do this 10 years, then. If I do this 100 years, then. You can't measure these things.
So that wasn't patience?
Maybe it was patience, but it wasn't timeless. He was trying, in a way, for a goal that he was expecting. If I keep doing it more, then. If you're beyond time, then a spiritual change can happen now, in this moment, or it takes infinite time. There is no control. There is no timeline that you can measure. It's instant. It can be endless. It's vast. Time is vast. The universe is turning multiple lifetimes. This is one of the traditional mythologies of the Theravada Buddhist teachings, the sense of vastness of time, and awakening happens in a huge time span, but it's also in the instant, in this moment. Right now, there isn't any other moment where it can happen. So, holding those two views of time, beyond human time. Human time, as we measure it, it's a concept, it's a thought, it's a concept. We just let go completely of time. And that's, on the deeper level, is the it's really the deepest place of patience, of Khanti. It's being out of time altogether, not interested in time, not interested in when, not trying to control anything, allowing things to happen in natural time, which is unmeasurable. that sense, there is no such thing as a process on the deepest level. There is no such thing as spiritual progress, itkadumut ruchani, because that needs time. The beginning is also the end. The start is also the finish. That's on the deepest level. You cannot say anymore that there is a track called a journey to be travelled. That's, as I say, Khanti, or patience at the deepest level, or if you like, the bodhisattva level. There is no track. The bodhisattva doesn't do anything so that now it's like this and tomorrow it'll be like that. It's all happening in the moment and forever, or beyond time. So I think I'll finish with that. So we'll take a moment to reflect.